You're listening to 15 Minutes of Flame with Robert Phoenix.
All right, that was the brand new opener. What do you guys think about that? Kind of a little hard driving, dark electronic funk thing. Want to give a big shout out to Megan Donovan for the little voiceover there. And thank you, Megan. If you haven't found Megan's music, you got to go check it out. Megan is a very talented DJ/electronic music producer. And hope to be using more for music, just as like bumper music on the show. Not just bumper, but like on the Friday Farcast, going from perhaps one segment to another. First of all, it is royalty free, and second of all, it's really good. And Megan Donovan, thank you, and props for putting that little voiceover together. So what's happening? What's going on out there? A little late today. Of course, it's Monday. Tend to get a little bit of a later start on Monday, only because of the Sunday night show. And I get wound up. I started off at 8 o'clock, and we went to almost 10 o'clock last night. And not really ready to go to bed, so I didn't really check out until probably about 12:30 or so. But I have this habit from when I was a kid that I still have, which is I listen to the radio before I go to bed. I've been doing this all my life, and I used to have a little Panasonic clock radio with a 60-minute timer, and I'd set that little timer on the top of the radio. And in most cases, I'd be listening to music. I remember one time I heard the long playing version of Nights in White Satin for the first time. I think it might have been about 11 years old or so on my radio. And boy, that was a life changer. You know what I'm saying? If you know the song and the long version. But so I've been doing that for most of my life, and eventually it evolved into listening to talk radio before I go to bed. And my grandmother was the exact same way. She would listen to Ron Taliaferro. And Ron Taliaferro was this crazy late night talk show host out of San Francisco. For a while, he was a news anchor, and then he migrated into late night talk. And I'm not even sure what Taliaferro's political bent was. I think he might have been conservative. He might have been, I don't know. I just know he was angry. He was totally angry. So one night at about 1 o'clock in the morning, because I couldn't sleep, this is back in the 80s, I called him up and I got on his show. And ironically enough, my grandmother was listening, so she heard me. Huh? I thought that was you. So last night I was listening to, I've been really getting back into Anthony Sutton again. And if you haven't discovered Anthony Sutton, you got to go find him. There's a lot of YouTube interviews with Anthony Sutton on YouTube. And a lot of them are with Elizabeth Clare Prophet. And I thought, this is the oddest thing. And if you follow Anthony Sutton's career arc, he was an intellectual, professor, was schooled at some of the finest schools in England, Oxford. He also continued his education at University of California, Berkeley in California, and eventually winds up at Stanford, where he becomes a teacher there there and is connected to the Hoover Institute. And the Hoover Institute actually paid Sutton to write a couple books. They didn't know what they were getting into. Now, remember, this is a guy who was an academic, an English academic. And even though the English academics can be pretty out there and destructive in their own rights, I mean, look at the Huxley brothers and who else? H.G. Wells. I mean, you know, we're talking really bright, but Fabian Society and you know that kind of thinking, right? So Sutton goes in and he starts to look at power in the United States. I think that's where it all starts off. He looks at power. He wants to find out sort of who's got the juice, and it leads him to Skull and Bones. And then he begins to look at Skull and Bones and who's on the Skull and Bones team, and then all of a sudden he realizes that there's something pretty significant going on. And then he looks at the left-right paradigm, and he understands that it's completely false, utterly false, and that they exist for one sole purpose, and that is to create friction and tension and create a one world order. And eventually he winds up leaving academia. Now, there's absolutely no way Anthony Sutton could get away with what he was doing then in the 1960s and 70s. Today, college wouldn't let him. There's absolutely no way. So he was a very, very early adopter. Extremely, and so his books are available as well, which I highly recommend. You should get his books. And one of the things that there are two areas that he specialized in. One is how the elite control education, and the other was the tacit relationship between the United States and the former Soviet Union, known as, it was the Soviet Union. And we got a little comment there. Finally figured out how to access you live here. All right. Nice to see you, Maury. Welcome to the shoe. Today we have a really good shoe. We're going to be talking about another shooting in a minute before I finish this piece on Sutton. So he really got into this dynamic between the United States and Nazi Germany, number one, and then the United States and the Soviet Union. And he does, really fantastic crack research. This is research at the highest level. He is an academic. He has access. This is a guy that's got access. He's not like, you or I, or skimming through all kinds of stuff on the internet or however we garner our information and research. This guy, Anthony Sutton, had the keys. He had the keys to the library. He had the keys to the vault of various universities, which is where all the good stuff is buried. And so he found out many, many things. And one of the things that he found out was the fact that Nazi Germany was able to reach a level of production and industry so quickly after World War I. If you follow what happened with World War I, Germany got pretty much incapacitated. A lot of their manufacturing was destroyed, and they went into the Weimar Republic. It became the Weimar Republic, or at least that was their governing system, which was totally corrupt, and the social system was venal and utterly pornographic, and young girls were selling themselves. I mean, it was a very, very decadent time in the history of Germany. There was a moral and economic void, and into that void stepped Adolf Hitler. And one of the reasons why Germany was able to get up to speed so quickly was the help of American industrialists. The biggest player was GE. Another one was IG Farben. Ford helped out. So there was the construction and reconstruction of Germany coming from the West, which allowed Germany to move forward on its path of conquest and war and play the Hegelian dialectic game. And this is where the Hegelian dialectic comes out of. It comes out of Anthony Sutton's research. And the Hegelian dialectic in World War II was the National Socialists and the National Democratic Party, right? The National Democrats and the National Socialists. The Socialists were, of course, Russia, Soviet Union, and then the National Democrats were Germany. So we had fascism, and then we had communism. These were the two sort of competing elements that were set against one another. Now, Sutton also makes a lot of notes through microscopic research and examination that the Soviet Union was backed by the United States. There wouldn't be any Soviet Union without the United States. The United States helped the Soviet Union with money. The Soviet Union had some oil reserves. The United States went in and helped them figure out how to extract it and how to pump it, refine it, and that allowed the Soviets to get into the world currency, start trading. And if you look at the manufacturing, the United States and England, to some extent, went over there, and they essentially built plants for the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union went in and copied those plants. And for a very long time, the Soviet Union didn't really make anything, just copied things. There was no innovation involved. They had one car that they created. It was a terrible car, absolutely terrible car. So Sutton really got into this, and then he got into education, and so he looked at these systems of control. And if you really, really, really want to get a solid, hardcore, educated, enlightened, intellectual, grounded understanding of the world we live in today and what's going on, go seek out Anthony Sutton, and you'll know you'll get more than just a primer. You'll see the bedrock, the foundation, the seeds of everything that we're going through. And his relationship with Elizabeth Clare Prophet still blows me away. It is one of the oddest pairings I've ever witnessed. Elizabeth Clare Prophet was this channel. She was born in New Jersey, and she met Mark Prophet, who had been inside the mountain at Mount Shasta and started the IAMs. Or was part of the IAMs. I'm not sure if he started, but he was part of the IAMs in Mount Shasta. And together they created their own version of the IAMs. And it was all about the Ascended Masters, all about Saint Germain and Kuthumi and El Morya, Kuan Yin. And then they had Summit Press, where you got a lot of the... And I was into that stuff big time in my 20s. I was totally into the Ascended Masters. Saint Germain was my dude. Anyway, she had her own version of it, and you get all these channeled messages and stuff. El Morya. Jesus was in there too, right? Sananda. He was part of that whole thing. And she eventually moved to Montana and started a compound. And they were preparing for doomsday. They were preparing for the end of the United States, perhaps the end of the world. Meanwhile, she saw herself as a bastion and light of freedom. And somehow she made a connection with Anthony Sutton, who leaves academia and decides that he's going to embrace this life of being a renegade researcher and become a guest at at the compound up there in Montana. And there's multiple sessions with her, and she's a great interviewer. And they totally connect. And the reason why Anthony Sutton is able to do this is because he's an Aquarius. So he's unconventional. God bless him. God love him. Anyway, go find the Anthony Sutton stuff. Get the books. If you want a real grounding in what's going on in the world, you'll see it all right there. And this leads into some of the stuff I'm going to talk about this morning. And over the weekend, I was looking at some video footage of what's going on in Southern California. And this has to do with the quote-unquote undocumented community. Now, listen, I've not been a raging borders guy. Okay? Although, based on what I saw over the weekend, it's probably not a bad thing. I grew up in California. I grew up in the Bay Area. I grew up with lots of different friends, black, white, brown, Asian, you name it, they were my friends. It's just how it was in San Jose, California. It was one of the most ethnically diverse places in the United States. Period, end of story. For the most part, we all got along. We had our different little things, different little quirks, different little cultures. Sometimes we'd go to each other's parties, sometimes we wouldn't. And that's like life, right? I mean, it was a microcosm of life. But we didn't go on hating each other. There wasn't this sense of hatred and anger, which has now been really cultivated. So I was watching some video from Southern California, and it has to do with the undocumented community. And I'm telling you right now, these people are aggressive. They're really, really aggressive. And they don't have any desire to blend in. They don't have any desire to be a part of the country. The whole idea here is reconquista. And again, I'm not a xenophobe. I'm reporting to you. I'm reporting to you with what I've been able to see, not feet on the ground, but kind of eyes in the sky from my point of view. And it's not pretty. Just telling you, it's not pretty. And when I look at that material, there are a couple things that really come to mind. Number one, this is a recent phenomenon. Again, like I would say 20 years ago, which is not that long ago, if you think about it. 20 years ago places us right at the edge of the 20th century. Think about that. 1998, edge of the 20th century. We didn't have that kind. I mean, look, I lived in the Bay Area, which was probably one of the most radical places you could live in the United States. But it wasn't so radical in the sense that there was this ultimate goal and plan to, overtake portions of the United States. And maybe there was, maybe it was there all along. And maybe these were kind of sleeper cells waiting to happen, waiting to get the right momentum, the right time, the right numbers, the right mass. Perhaps that's all part of what was kind of in the works there. But I didn't see it. And I lived in places like Berkeley and Oakland, and yeah, pretty radical. But it was people tended to get along for the most part. Now that's just out the window. It is done and it's gone. So there are a couple of things that have taken place. Number one is, of course, the immigration policy. And number two, not the entire community, but a large portion of that community has become weaponized. And the basic message is, fuck you. This is our land. We're going to take it. And you meaning dominant culture, are dying off, and we've got the numbers, and you're screwed, so you better get used to it. And you know what? I'm going to tell you right now, to a large extent, that is truth. And I'm not sure, what we're going to do, right? I know that Trump has said we're going to deport people. That's not going to happen. I'm telling you right now, there's going to be no deportation, especially after this this vote with the Supreme Court. And so while I'm not a huge borders guy, because I've had great relationships with people from south of the border all my life. But you look at a situation like that, and it's like, wow, it definitely makes a case for closing off the border. I'm telling you right now, because it's not. Look, it could be any group. I'm not singling out a specific group, but it is radical. It's disturbing. It is disruptive, and there's a growing portion of a specific community that wants to take over, wants to reclaim their rightful land. Well, let's be clear about the rightful land. The rightful land was, if you're looking from a migratory, sort of procession, a lot of these folks who are from south of the border, they've got relatives who came from Spain, deep in their family background, the exact same thing. Every place was colonized. This is what happened. There was a period of colonization on the planet. And Europe was part of that colonization process. But it wasn't just England. It wasn't just Holland. Spain was colonizing. Portugal was colonizing. Italy was colonizing. And these are very different groups. The French were this is what was happening during that time. Now, was it a great thing? Well, we're witnessing the sort of the metastasized outcome or the tumorous growth of colonization, right? 300 years down the line, this is what we're experiencing now. 400 years more likely. Was Columbus? Shit, that's almost 500. About 450 years. Anyway, but to take this to another level, and this goes back to the Sutton stuff, is that this is completely engineered. This is completely driven by the elite class and system. It's the same mechanism and it's the same social driver that has powered the refugee crisis and the refugee wave into Western Europe. So there's essentially a recolonization taking place. Now the countries who did the colonizing, they're being recolonized. In some ways, it's an interesting balance. If you have to look at the universe, we'll have to see what happens here. But this goes to what Sutton was talking about, in that the elites drive the social program. And they know exactly what they're doing and the reason why they're doing it. And ultimately, what they want to do is to use this tension, the left-right paradigm, the us against them, the duality, to create their version of a new world order where they are in control of the majority of the planet's resources and wealth. And they will not stop until this has occurred, which means that there has to be another seismic shift in resources like we saw in 2009. So the whole thing's been completely engineered from top to bottom, and they're all pretty much in on it, by the way. So I wanted to talk and shift gears to and get into this Waffle House shooting, which happened yesterday. You're not going to believe what I'm going to read to you here. So the shooter, his name is Travis Reinking, the king of the Rhine, the king of Germany, right? I mean, the Rhine River. That's his name, Travis Reinking. And what happened was that he went into a Waffle House, or at least he walked. Hold on a second. Hold on. Hold on, let me hear this. Okay, so he went to a Waffle House in Nashville, and he said he shot. The reports are that he shot 4 people dead. And what did I say? Again, I'm not trying to be the prophet of doom here, but I said the next wave of shootings would take place in what? The workplace. So we had that weird, bizarre thing at YouTube. I don't even know what the hell that was about. And now we have a shooting at a Waffle House. And of course, he used an AR-15. Hello? He went, you know what happened? He went to the Waffle House and he was looking for Nikki Haley. That's what happened. And then they had to tell him she's at the UN now. So if I were authorities, I'd go check out the UN. I don't know why this guy is shooting the Waffle House, if he shot the Waffle House. I don't know. I was watching ABC News last night, and the whole thing just seemed like, again, another freaking simulation. There was a guy that was a hero, African-American, shot in front of a green screen. You got this one guy who's the main witness. Just the whole thing is just totally bizarre. And I'm looking at footage of the Waffle House with some windows blown out. He went inside the restaurant, continued firing. Police say Waffle House customer James Shaw Jr. took action. He's got, what's really interesting about this James Shaw Jr. guy is that he has a wound on his elbow that looks like the wound from a scatter gun. And that it's got, that simulamo or whatever it's called. He's got that same kind of wound on his forearm that a lot of these other people look like they have in these shootings. It's like, the bullet grazed them. Okay, so here we go. Let me just read this story. This is from the reputable news source known as CNN. When Travis Reinking breached a White House security barrier in July, police say he had a very specific request. He wanted to meet with U.S. President Donald Trump. Reinking told a Secret Service officer at the Northeast entrance, get this, that he was a sovereign citizen. Well, first of all, the kid is he's ill-informed. He's not there's no way you can be a sovereign citizen. You're either sovereign or you're a citizen. And they should have corrected him right at the start. He said he had a right to inspect the grounds, according to Metro Police Department. The report does not say if Reinking was referring to the anti-government extremist movement of the same name. Whoa! Being a sovereign means now you're an extremist and you're anti-government. How about that? You see where this is going? Using an AR-15. But the 29-year-old's previous encounters with law enforcement are coming under fresh scrutiny. He's named as a suspect in a deadly Sunday morning shooting at a Tennessee Waffle House. Reinking's brush with law enforcement in the nation's capital was not his first. Documents obtained by CNN affiliate WBBM from the sheriff's office in Tazewell County, Illinois, suggest a troubling pattern involving guns and what one police report described as delusional behavior. Travis is hostile towards police and does not recognize police authority. Travis also possesses several firearms, an officer said in May 2016. At the time, Reinking's parents had called emergency services to report their son believed pop star Taylor Swift was stalking him. He had made comments about killing himself. Reinking moved to Nashville in fall 2017 and worked in construction. Metro Nashville Police said he was fired from one job in early April, just started with another construction company on April 16th, but did not return for his second day of work. At the time of the White House incident, Reinking lived in an apartment above his father's business, a crane rental company in Tremont, Illinois. According to the sheriff's office incident reports, after his arrest at the White House, for trespassing and being in a restricted area. The FBI and Secret Service coordinated with local law enforcement to investigate Ryan King and take away his guns. Matthew Espenshade, Assistant Special Agent in charge of the FBI's Nashville office, said on Sunday. On August 24th, the Tazewell County Sheriff's Office seized 4 firearms and ammunition from Ryan King's apartment, along with the state firearm owner's identification, according to an incident report. The seizure came less than 2 weeks after a Tazewell County sergeant said that Ryan King drove up to his squad car and asked about filing a report. Ryan King told the sergeant that people were tapping into his computer and phone and barking like dogs outside of his home. According to an August 11 incident, he said he felt like he was being watched. People were baiting him into breaking the law. By the way, this is not crazy. This does happen to people. This absolutely does happen to people. Officers released the firearms and ammo to Ryan King's father, Jeffrey. The report states investigators now believe they returned the guns to his son. One of those weapons, of those 4 weapons, one was the AR-15 style weapon recovered from the shooting scene at Waffle House. Of course, it's an AR-15. It's got a history of mental problems. On and on and on and on. On June 16, 2017, an employee of his father's business, J&J Cranes, called the Tazewell County Sheriff's Office to report that Ryan King came down from his apartment wearing a pink dress and holding a rifle. An incident report states the employee told police Ryan King yelled, "Is this what you fucking want?" before he threw his rifle in the trunk and left, according to the reports. Around the same time, the Tremont Police Department responded to a call to a public pool. According to another incident, the pool director told the responding officer that a man in his 20s barged into the pool wearing a pink women's house coat. The report states the man dove into the pool, took off the coat, and swam around in his underwear. When he got out of the pool, he shouted at lifeguards that he was a man and exposed his genitals to them, the report states. But is that Ryan King? The rifle stayed in the vehicle. No one at the pool asked to press charges. The officer said in the report, this is an information report showing the state of mind of Travis Ryan King, the report said. Meanwhile, several members of the Tazewell County Sheriff's Office went to J&J Cranes to speak with Ryan King. Travis had some mental problems, and I asked him if he would speak to the emergency response service. He said he didn't want to. The officer report, Travis had already spoken to them before and been in the hospitals. The officer said he also called Ryan King's father, who was out of state. Jeffrey Ryan King told the officer he'd taken the 3 guns from his son and locked them up when Travis was having problems. Oh boy, here we go. More fodder for the hog farm. Get ready for that. Oh, by the way, Travis Ryan King is still on the loose. They've not found him. I don't know what to make of this, to be honest with you. I mean, clearly it sounds like, it could be another PSYOP, of course, because he's using an AR-14. You've got the guy Ryan King sounding very Germanic, the king of the Rhine. Sunday, holy day, shooting up on a Sunday. The sovereign citizen label linking sovereign citizen to Travis Ryan King to insane to AR-15 to guns. We got to take away the guns. We got to take away these people. They're crazy. They have crazy, deluded ideas. Here we go. Get ready. Get ready. We're going to have some big time intensity. Big time intensity that's going to be taking place when we have the Mars cycle going into Aquarius and Mars retrograde. Now, in the background, I've got CNN on. I just have it on my computer. And they have a little window playing stories now. And it's called The Cycle of Inaction. And it's going back and looking at all these events. I'm telling you right now, there's Robbie Parker. Oh my God. What a What a phony. What a phony SOB. I'm sorry. The heat is on, kids. They are not going to stop. They are not going to stop until the guns are removed. And it's not just guns. This is a massive psychological operation where they are into profiling large groups of people who have some form of dissent. And the dissent that they likely have is not the same kind of dissent that, say, Antifa has, or BLM has, or La Raza has. They're clearly mining a particular group now. And that's not great. That is not great. And they're controlling the narrative. They're controlling this narrative. Now, whether you believe or not that this kid, who sounds like he's probably whacked out and targeted and whatever's going on, right? If he, again, I'm just reading the information. I know nothing about Travis Reinking. I don't know anything about except what I'm reading here. And in many instances, a lot of times these people seem to pop out of nowhere, and do they even really exist? Right? Do they even really exist? He fits a perfect profile, doesn't he? Perfect profile. Groomed and ready to go. And of course, with an AR-15. The narrative that's being controlled is what happens after the event, and how CNN puts together the cycle of inaction and the video reel of all these other things that took place at one point in time to show you, the citizens of this fine country, that you need to take action and get rid of these damn guns. And not only that, but you may need to get rid of the people that think that the guns are actually a good thing, or at least a thing that is connected to what we call the Constitution. You may as well get rid of them because they've got crazy ideas about being sovereign and wearing pink dresses and feeling targeted and victimized and the whole nine yards. That's the narrative that's being controlled. That is the narrative that they are showing, and it is not a pretty picture. It's taken them a while to get here. If you go back and you look at what took place in September of 2001, September 11th of 2001, what happened? Well, we had 9/11, and where were the terrorists? Well, the terrorists were out there, right? They were out there, they were over there, they were hiding in caves, they were doing all these things, and that they were always scheming, plotting to be able to get to this country and then, ruin our way of life, ruin our freedom, make us feel unsafe, and commit more money to the military so they could go over to the Middle East and get into the viper's nest and then eliminate the vipers inside their nest. Right? That's what happened. And it was like, okay, it's just a matter of time before that changes. The narrative changes, comes back to the United States, and it has to do with the United States citizens, the people of the United States. And it's happening. It's happening right now. That's what's going on. And you're going to find that there will be fewer and fewer events of what we'd call an Islamophobic accelerant. No, the new terrorists are who? Nicholas Cruz. This character, Travis Reinking. Destabilized, angry, disassociative, troubled youth with AR-15s. So what do we do? How do we look at this, and how do we say, well, look, clearly feels like there's an agenda. Oh, are you a conspiracy theorist? Oh my, you sound just like this Travis Reinking guy. You sound just like this Travis Reinking character. Do you have any firearms? What's your mental health history? Are you a sovereign citizen? You see where this is going? It sounds lining up. So the problem really lies in mainstream media to a large extent. And then, of course, again, these are the same people. These are the same people that Anthony Sutton has talked about in his talks from the 1960s and 19s. It's the same people. They're running the same program. They're internationalists. That's what they used to be called, internationalists. Now we call them globalists. They're more than that, of course, obviously. But this is the faction, and this is the social program that they want to move people into. Nationalism, sovereignty, populism, whatever you want to call it, saying, hey, we're an American, or hey, we're humans, and what we really want to be is sovereign. We don't want to be a part of some global control system. And this is what Alex Jones has been talking about for a long time. Alex's problem is he made deals with people, and he couldn't get the full spectrum. Now he's in trouble. You should see what happens with Alex. I talked a lot about Alex last night on my astrology show over on YouTube. If you haven't seen the show, go check it out. I thought it was a really good show. We had great participation. We got new people showing up on Sunday nights. It's really good. Really enjoying the Sunday night show. We looked at the chart of John Krasinski, and we talked about A Quiet Place, which I highly recommend. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. And I've got a review of A Quiet Place on my website, robertphoenix.com. So there it is. That's the latest. And the monster is on the loose. Travis Reinking is out there. He's on the loose. You know what I loved? I don't want to give away spoilers. Gosh, I wish you'd all had seen A Quiet Place so we could talk about it. Steve, I know you and Chris are listening. You got to go see it so we can talk about it on the show. That should be something we get into. Just be aware, people. Just be aware of what's going on. Be aware of what's taking place. Be aware of the narrative. Deconstruct it for yourself. You don't necessarily have to go out and tell the world what's going on, because the world really doesn't give a shit in a lot of ways. People don't necessarily want to hear it unless they have some kind of crack or opening inside of their psyche, in which case then they'll be able to hear it. And in most cases, they won't want to hear it, so why waste your breath? Why get into something that is going to be ultimately really frustrating? You might experience some resentment, and you just don't go there. Don't go there. We might have at some point, and I'm just telling you right now, at some point we might have to go into our own quiet place. I remember years ago, this is back in the 90s, that I saw a time that was coming where being able to speak freely was going to be so regulated, so processed, so truncated, criticized, and even adjudicated, that we would have an incredibly tiny window to be able to articulate or speak truth to power. And the image that came to mind was the eye of the needle, and what passes through the eye of the needle. Think about that. Think about that as it relates to this whole notion of truth and freedom of speech and articulating the spectrum, in a pretty broad spectrum. Well, look at what we talked about today. I went from Anthony Sutton, Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, to Travis Reinking, Waffle House, elites, globalists, internationalists, left-right paradigm. We did it in the span of about 40 minutes. In the not-so-distant future, I'm not sure we're going to be able to have those conversations. And if we have those conversations, it's going to have to be like a laser through the eye of a needle. I think that's where we're headed, unfortunately. Our own version of the quiet place. I could be wrong. But I shall not be silenced, at least not for now. Should we do time tunnel? I think we'll put time tunnel off for tomorrow because I got a busy day ahead of me as an astrologer. Yes, I do that. That's part of my thing, and I help people with astrology. It's my bread and butter. It's what I love to do. So I got a big day ahead of me on that tip. Tomorrow, I'm going to get into some more programming. I was sent a series of videos. Well, it was one video. And I started to get into it, and it was like, mind blown, total mind blown. And it has to do with what's going on in our public school system and churches. And I'm not a church guy. I'm just not. I've never been a church guy. I've tried. The heretic in me doesn't work for me. It doesn't mean I don't love God. Don't love people that go to church. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a blasphemer. I'm not anti-church. If you want to go to church, it's fine, right? I have certain opinions about mega churches. I think to some extent, if a church has a congregation of say over 1,000 people, they should probably be taxed, and that goes for temples and mosques as well. I feel that. If you got a small church, let's say less than 1,000 people, you are tax-free. Does that mean you got to register for your church? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But these mega churches that get these tax breaks, they're like corporations. And they're not good. It has nothing to do with any kind of message around simplicity and fellowship and love and helping one another. Anyway, I'm going to get into some of these videos tomorrow, and it has to do with what's going on inside our public schools and inside the church. Again, I'm not a big church, but these are people that are church people. And it has to do with, conditioning and programming children to embrace transgenderism, plain and simple. Again, this is linked back to the transgender economy, which is millions and millions of dollars are being spent on conditioning people to not only accept it as a social norm, but to create such a state of gender confusion and gender dysphoria that their children may actually opt to have their sex changed and become a client for life with the transgender economy. So we're going to tackle that tomorrow. If you have any interest in deconstructing that with me. In the meantime, I'm sure we'll hear more about Travis Ranking and the scourge of Nashville at the Waffle House. All right. Hey, by the way, if you want to check out what happened last night over on YouTube, go to my YouTube channel, which is Radio Farcast over on YouTube in the 11th house, and you can take in last night's show. All right, let me get on out of here. It's a Leo moon. Go out and be loving. Be loving. How about that for a nice little positive to be loving? Tell people that you love them. And you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to see open what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and here is the new intro and outro. Thanks again.
You're listening to 15 Minutes of Flame with Robert Phoenix.